We begin today's program up on Capitol Hill. Pleased to be joined by a Virginia Democrat, Congressman Gerry Connolly of the great state of Virginia. And Congressman, thank you for being with us during this break week. I want to start with discussions around the budget because we've heard so much talk about the Paul Ryan budget last week. What are you hearing from your constituents about the budget, about the debt and deficit now that you've had a couple of days to let that vote digest and you're back home?
Rick and Amy, great to be back with you. Funny you should bring that up. We had a telephone town hall meeting last night, and we did a poll. 1,300 of my constituents responded, which is a very enormous sample. And by a margin of 73% to 27%, they overwhelmingly said they want to keep Medicare the way it is, and they rejected the Paul Ryan approach to dismantling Medicare as we know it.
Let's talk about that for a second, though, this idea that maybe, just maybe, we can see some compromise here. The president has said that the $250,000 the tax cut for those making over $250,000 is going to go away. I seem to remember the last time you were on our show, you were a very big supporter of continuing that tax cut. What do you say back to the president about that?
Well, Amy, we want to be real precise. I was a big supporter of continuing all of the tax cuts temporarily because of the fragility of the economic recovery. I do not favor the permanent extension of that tax cut. And frankly, I think we got to look at whether we can afford the middle class tax cut permanently. Between the two of them, that's $3.3 trillion we can't afford. And so if we decide we're going to go with one or the other or both, somebody's going to have to figure out how to pay for it, or else they're going to have to give up their commitment to deficit reduction.
And you'd be open to discussing middle class taxes. You think taking away the tax cut for 250 plus may not be enough?
That's about $700 billion over the next 10 years. The middle class tax cut is $2.6 trillion.
And specifically, though, what sorts of things are we talking about here? We're talking about like the child care tax credit, things like that?
That's right. But look, that's just one item. My broader point, and with my constituents last night in my town hall meeting, was everything has to be on the table. We have to have an honest discussion, and we have to set priorities and express our values. If we decide that those tax cuts are among our highest priorities and represent our community values, great, but then we're going to have to figure out how we're going to pay for them because it is going to cost. It's not cost-free. And that's true about every choice we make. I think much of the discussion here in Washington, frankly, has been dishonest in that it focuses narrowly on one band of spending to the exclusion of a discussion about revenues, tax expenditures, entitlement programs, and national defense, all of which has to be on the table in this broad national discussion about our priorities and our values.
As we talk about priorities and values, I want to hone in on Medicare because we've seen such hot rhetoric over who wants to do what to the Medicare program. What are your bottom lines on what we should be doing with the Medicare program? Everyone says we need to control costs. Where do those costs come from?
You know, we had a hearing the other day before one of the subcommittees I serve on oversight and government reform, in which $125 billion a year has been identified in improper federal payments, the lion's share of which is Medicare. So there's a lot of inefficiency, improper payments, double payments, redundant payments, and fraud that has to be addressed in the Medicare system long before you get to talk about any change in benefits. The Paul Ryan approach.
Right.
But Congressman, we hear all the time about fraud and waste and abuse and inefficiencies, and we all know that they exist, and everyone will agree you have to go after them. But when you do that, that still doesn't address the fact that the health care costs are consuming a greater share of our tax revenue every year and will continue far into the future. Medicare, I think everyone agrees that something has to be done about it. Where do you square this? Is it means testing? Is it benefits cuts?
Wait a minute. We did do something about it. We passed the health care reform bill. And that health care reform bill does rein in the cost of Medicare, does address this issue of duplicative payments and fraud and waste and abuse, and saves considerable amount of money. We were beat up last year by groups like this 60-plus Republican group, sort of a front group for the Republicans, pretending to speak for senior citizens because we were, quote, threatening Medicare as we know it. Now they come along and endorse a plan that dismantles Medicare as we know it. That isn't the solution. Making Medicare more efficient, trying to bring down overall health care costs, from which, of course, Medicare would benefit, is critical. But dismantling Medicare which a program which most Republicans opposed when it was started in 1965, is absolutely not the answer. And I think it's perpetrating a fraud on the American people that's the stark choice they face. If you want to reduce the deficit, you got to get rid of Medicare. That's a phony choice. It's dishonest. It's intellectually wrong. And we're going to fight it with every breath we got.
I want to switch gears for just a second here to look at your state, or the Commonwealth, as it were. Redistricting in that state now coming to bear as well. But I want to actually talk specifically about your district and its impact on the presidential race. And of course, we're going to have a very big Senate race there, too. To win Virginia, the president, Tim Kaine, they've got to win your district. Democrats and you know how tough it was in 2010. How do you and other Democrats turn things around in places like Fairfax County, Loudoun County, and the outer suburbs?
Well, Amy, I think something that often gets overlooked in the discussion about Virginia or any other state in terms of whether it's winnable or in play is turnout. In 2010, roughly, in my district, we had 40% turnout. In 2012, we're going to double that. We're going to have 80% turnout. There's a world of difference. Not only is that twice the turnout, but who are those extra people who are coming out and voting in a presidential year? And in my district, a lot of those folks are very sympathetic to the Democratic message and would be very supportive of President Obama. So I believe at the starting gate, when you double turnout in a district like mine, given the diversity of Northern Virginia, President Obama starts with a real advantage, and so does Tim Kaine.
All right, there we have it. Advantage in Virginia. Congressman Gerry Connolly, Democrat of Virginia. We appreciate you being here on Southline. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.